Now we're going to talk about another kind of listening, a mindful kind of listening to go deeper in a conversation.
And I call this empathy focusing. In the other segments, the last segment, we talked about active listening, where the listener simply gives back what the person is saying, and the speaker is mainly just trying to be understood. Now we're going to add Gendlin's focusing by the speaker. And the speaker is going to close their eyes, if possible, and really pay attention inside to what Gendlin calls a felt sense, the place of the pause, the place that is vague, pre-verbal, intuitive, doesn't have words yet. And then the listener is going to say back whatever the speaker, now I'm going to call him the focuser. He's not just a speaker. He's going beyond trying to be understood by another person. Now he's going deeper into understanding himself and could come up with change from there. So the listener will be reflecting, the focuser will be checking with the felt sense, is it this, is it that, and saying more words. And in this, again, it's a simple method that you could do in the middle of a business meeting if someone's grappling for something they don't have words for yet. You could do it in an interpersonal situation where you're asking each other, well, what is it in me that got us into this struggle? And each person would focus on that and sense into, well, what is it in me that got me in this struggle? So again, it's meant to be out in the world, a way of inserting Gendlin's focusing easily into situations. So I teach it. I teach three main kinds of response, which I'll hope to demonstrate while Serge is the focuser. So if we were in a situation, I would invite Serge to close his eyes if he's comfortable doing that. And his job is to pay attention to that pre-verbal sensing inside and to deflect anything I say that drags him away from that. He doesn't need to be polite to me as the listener. His job is to hang on to this subtle pre-verbal sensing. So that's his job as the focuser. I also like to say to focusers, if any tears come up, even a slight sheen of tears, you might really pay attention to that place that often signals deeper meanings. But whatever, his job, close your eyes if you can, hold on to your inner sensing and check whatever the listener says against it. So the first response I'm going to do as a listener is that same active listening, empathic, reflective listening that Carl Rogers taught us. I'm going to do that 3/4 of the time. And I can remind myself, because I don't want to get carried away at trying to do other things. The main thing is give the person empathic listening. However, sometimes I hear the focuser using the same word over and over. Like a focuser might be saying, I'm just so jealous. It just makes me so jealous. I just can't get over this jealous feeling. In that case, as the listener, I might encourage a deeper focusing simply by asking for more, I call it, about that word jealous. So as the listener, I might say, would it be okay to just stop and be with, no, that's the third one. Wait, sorry, that's my third intervention. This one is just called asking for more. So you would just say, would it be okay to say more about jealous? So you're allowing the focuser to pay attention to the place of where there's more implicit meaning. The third response is a slightly stronger intervention. I call it the focusing invitation. And in that case, you might say to the person, would it be okay to just stop and be with or sense into that jealous feeling? So I'm actually suggesting a pause, a deeper pause. And you can, audience, you can find a lot of instruction for this on my website and in my inexpensive manual downloads, and we'll put all of that on the page. So I don't expect you to learn all this now. But now
I will just repeat the 3 points you made, because it's going to be for people to hear that as the listener, the three levels of intervention. One is simply a reflection, which is going to be very similar to the active listening we've talked about before. So just a kind of a playback. Two is asking for more. You notice that the person is coming back to a certain theme. So would you want to say a little more about that? Okay. And the third one is you have an intuition as the listener that something is happening, and you invite the focuser to just stop and go deeper into this and make a pause to see what may come up.
So what we're adding beyond what the active listening lesson was, both the focuser and the listener have an understanding of Gendlin's philosophy of the implicit, that we have a wealth of wisdom that comes in a pre-verbal bodily feel, and that Gendlin's focusing is a way to pay attention to that and make words for that. So the listener is trying to facilitate focusing in the speaker. They're not trying to direct the content. I'm not trying to get him to come up with a certain solution. I'm not trying to guide his solution. I am guiding him toward implicit felt meaning. I am trying to help him get out of just the words he already knows and to spend time with that place where new meanings can come from so something can change, be it a personal problem, an interpersonal tension, or a group decision. So that's what's different. We both understand the role of implicit knowing. You want to say any of that back, or do you think that's whatever, up to you?
No, I'm going to just, that's something about that what's happening here is it's based on an understanding of Gendlin's philosophy of the implicit, which is essentially that basically that stuff is going to unfold. And so what the listener is doing is not guiding the focuser in a certain way, but helping the focuser relax into letting that unfolding happen.
Exactly. So we're going to try to demonstrate this. I'm telling myself, I don't have to present a miracle here. I'm going to listen to Serge maybe for 5 minutes as opposed to like a longer time. And then likely he'll also do the same with me. I do want to say, if you're in a group or an interpersonal situation where everybody has been told about the implicit as the source of the new, you could even, in a business meeting, ask people to go inside and check. What are your creative new ideas about this situation? And then you could listen to each person on their creative implicit knowing. This is not just for therapy. I'll say that. Okay, Serge, if you would be willing to, if you're comfortable, close your eyes. It's easier to pay attention to that implicit inner sensing, which often happens around the heart, chest, core center. So I'm going to give you a moment to just be with that, just sense down into that, and then you can speak just whatever comes just today from being here or whatever.
So I experience this as a tightness, like a hollowness in the throat and heart area.
So you're experiencing a tightness, and I think you said like a hollowness in the throat and heart area. And just paying attention.
Yeah. And that, actually, as I hear it played back by you, it kind of becomes a bit lighter.
So just hearing it back, that there's something tight, hollow in your throat, heart area, already it makes it lighter.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it lighter. And I'm going to say to our audience, what I notice is that we want to really slow down. Now I want to be able to let Serge take a long time because he's sitting with this inner knowing. So in our other things, people were kind of going pretty fast. Now I just notice I want to give him lots of time for that inner sensing. So it already got lighter just from hearing it back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And there is a sense of just of wanting more space for it. Just I feel like my hands want to do that kind of gesture of the sense of making space. And I feel like as I'm making this gesture, it's kind of a rendition of widening, making space.
Mm-hmm. So again, our audience doesn't get to see Serge as I'm being able to see him. But again, he's saying yes, hearing it back and spending a little time with it brings, first there's a lot of being with it, and wanting to make a gesture, which I can't totally see, but he's describing it, you're describing it as a gesture of making space. You just want to make space for this hollow, tight, whatever it is. You just want to make some space inside for it.
Yeah. And so, as I am aware of both being in the experience of being the focuser, but also that there is an audience, I'm adding a footnote that, the details of what I'm dealing with, it might be, I don't have to share. I share only what I want to share. So this can be a very private process.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, so right now, I am feeling more and more of that sense of space and solid but not rigid.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're wanting to share with the audience that you don't have to say what the content is. If it's a life problem or whatever it is, you don't even have to name the content. You can still have this focusing process, this sitting with it and finding out something new for yourself without having to tell the whole world what it's about. And I also want to just point out a little earlier, especially when Serge was paying attention inside, he was going, It was also kind of like, what is this? And that's the kind of thing people start saying when they're paying attention to implicit meaning. What is this whole thing about? Or, oh, it's something like, but they don't have the total words. You'll just notice. This is different from when you're just a speaker. Now he's a focuser. He's working on this something. So I'm going to stay back, and then I'm going to just try to demonstrate my asking for more, even though it's not totally appropriate here. I'm just going to try to demonstrate it. So Serge you wanted to point out that you don't have to tell everybody your most private things in order to have some focusing time. You can still be in your process and have the listener keep you company without even divulging what it's all about in terms of content.
Yeah.
And then you're also saying, as you've been sitting there with it, paying attention to this whole thing in the center of your body or wherever you're experiencing it, this hollow tightness, this making space gesture with your hands has led you to feel more space and more solid in a good way, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to ask for more, but I'll say to my audience, it would have been easier to just say, can you say more about that hollow? Or now I could say, could you say more about that solid? And this points out a beautiful thing, that when you're doing focusing, often different sides, different aspects of a conflict or whatever appear, different parts you could call it. And as a listener, you can work with the person to decide which of those they want to follow. So I'm going to try saying, would you like to say more about that solid?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, the hollow has disappeared. It's replaced by the solid, and um, it's coming up more articulate than it would be if I had a time to think as you were talking and explaining what you're doing to the audience. So it comes out more articulate than it would have otherwise. But that sense of, say, like a flat balloon that has air. So flat would have been hollow, and now it's kind of full of air, and it's not hollow. It's more solid.
Mm-hmm. So I asked you to say more, and you also said you had time to sit with it, and more came. And what you have is an image of a balloon, a balloon that started out flat, no air in it, and that was this hollow feeling, tight and hollow. But now, with this giving space and the becoming more solid, it's as if air has entered into that balloon and inflated it, made it lighter and more solid.
Yeah, so actually it's interesting because that's a great example. When you say lighter, I have a no, and I'm coming back. I didn't say lighter, and that's a perfect demonstration of what you said. Is like really a sense of wanting to push back. Say no, didn't understand me. It's not lighter, and it's really but it having the no also helps me articulate better what it is as opposed to what it's not. And it's that sense of, it's expanding from the inside out.
So something in you wants to say, no, I didn't say lighter. It's not lighter. And that also is leading you to check and say, well, if it's not lighter, what is it? And what comes up, it's the way it would be if a balloon or something expanded from the inside out.
Yeah.
More spacious. And
and again, there's a no. And it's interesting. So, and it's just a second ago you were saying it, and I'm finding out, yeah. Then you say more spacious, say no, and it's not the same quality as no. It's more no. It not quite that. But that sense, I didn't say that.
Okay, now just for purpose of demonstration, I'm going to ask him to do my third thing. Again, it's not totally appropriate to rush like this, but I'm going to say back, boy, again, it comes up, no, not as harsh, not as strongly, but again, no, that doesn't fit. No, not exactly that. So, and I kind of lost something there, which is because as a listener, you do feel a little like, oh my God, I didn't do it right. So I'll just acknowledge that to my audience as well. I'm just going to try to set that aside, and Serge will get me back on track if I'm too far off track. So I'm going to ask, would it be okay to just sit quietly and go more deeply into the body feel of this whole thing about expanding from the inside out? It's not just being light. It's not just being full. It's something else. Would it be okay just to sit with it for a minute, really be with it, and then let your words come from there?
Yeah, and so I'm going to take a moment, but first I want to express that the wanting to express, it would be okay.
So first you want to say, yes, it would be okay for me to take your instruction.
Yeah.
It's important for you to say that. Yes, I'm making a choice to do this, going deeper. It's
it feels right.
Invitation.
It feels right. The invitation feels right.
And I can take it or leave it. Yeah. And I decided to take it. Great. Okay, so if you'd like to just take a moment to just sit quietly and be with it and see what comes. This whole thing about from flat and hollow to expanding from the inside out.
Mm. Mm. So it's very satisfying in a way that it feels hard to find words to describe. And I can find words, but they're only, little approximations of what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. So it
That's a
feels good to
sense.
okay, go ahead.
There's a
Mm-hmm.
sense of fullness, but not full, meaning like you're too full or it's too full, but um, full as opposed to empty. Um, it's hard to find the words, but there's something that feels very wholesome, um, very solid, not rigid, very taking space, uh, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm. So let me say that back. And again, as a teaching note, just look, the man is struggling with a very sturdy felt referent. We may call it vague and pre-verbal, all these Gendlin words, but it is resilient. It's right there. He can pay attention to it. He can come back to it later, and it's going to tell him if the words are right. And he's saying, I can't really put this whole thing into words. They will just be approximations. It's more than the words I have right now. But there's something about it. It's a kind of fullness, but not like being too full, eating too much, being too full. It's a wholesome feeling of being filled up in a good way. And it is solid. That word comes again. There's something solid about it and wholesome about this kind of fullness.
And again, as I nod as you talk, and then something I notice like the word solid but not rigid. The not rigid was missing, and so, but which is important to add, for me. But there's a great satisfaction about, in a way I can express it more in a gesture of saying, say, if you touch clay or if you touch a pot or if that you feel like there's something there.
Mm-hmm. So it's very satisfying to be with this feeling of fullness. And it was important to you that I didn't say it back quite right. You said solid but not rigid. And that's important to what this whole thing is about or is like. It's satisfying, it's full, it's maybe fulfilling, it's solid but not rigid. And it's even more than I can put into words.
Yeah, and it's not just that it's like the sense of touching something.
Ah, I missed that up. Okay. You're trying to find an image or a metaphor or a gesture for it. And it would be like touching. And did you say like touching a piece of clay?
Yeah, something that is, it's like touching a ball, for instance. It's not super inflated. It's flexible enough. It's really, it's not something that's going to collapse when you touch it or fold in, but it's not so rigid. So it has a little bit of give. So
Mm.
it's like you're touching it. It's very present, but there's kind of like flexibility, so there's a give and take, kind of.
Mm-hmm. And that brings a little bit of, even of a smile that those
Mm-hmm.
image and those words are fitting. It's as if you were touching a piece of clay. It would be solid, it would be there solidly, but it would also have some give. It would not be rigid or inflexible. It would be there, very solid, but also flexible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if we could just come to a stopping place pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that feels right. That feels
And
right.
and often we say in a focusing turn, would you like to put a flag in there? Make that the best image you can that would help you go back there and spend more time with this
Yeah. Yeah.
at another
Yeah. No, the
time.
image feels very clear as to something I could come back to.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I want to say in a teaching way, we don't even know what Serge was working on initially. And this could be a creative idea. I'm not going to talk about Serge. I'll just say, imagine that you're in a business and you're with your engineer, your resource and development people. And the guy is saying, God, I got something really good, really creative, but I just can't find the words for it. This is where you would wish all the colleagues would understand focusing and Gendlin's philosophy of the implicit about this very real world factual thing. What's the next step in terms of engineering here? And you would invite your engineer. It's okay that you don't have the words for it. It's an intuition. Yay! New things come from there. And you would say, okay, would you like to just take some time to sit with that, the part that you can't say? Just sit with that sense of there's something new here. And then do empathic listening. Surgery.
And I want to say, in a way, that somebody who doesn't know this and might listen to it might say it's really weird. Because
Mm-hmm.
here we are, just silences and talking about these weird things, and what does this have to do with, discussing creative ideas or business ideas? And it might actually be intimidating for people to listen to this. So I want to add that if, in a way, to people who don't know this, the best possible way I think that you can take it is to say that even the moment that feel the most inarticulate and in a way kind of stupid or regressed for you, those moments where you're dancing at the edge of finding words and only weird things come up, can be actually a source of amazing productivity. So it's not about trying to make it a mysterious process and saying you have to speak mumbo jumbo for it to work. But to say, even if actually those moments where you can only express yourself in mumbo jumbo are precious, and it's about making the space for allowing that mumbo jumbo to unfold,
Yes.
and it's going to bring you to some place that other people may not immediately understand, and it doesn't really matter. The point is, it's about helping you go forward with it. And from that place, then you're going to be in a better place to actually express it in a way that other people can understand it and take action on it.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, our watchers were not able to see Serge's face as I was. So he had his eyes closed most of the time, although sometimes he would open them and more when he was telling me what was going on. You could also see some sighs in his body, and satisfaction on his face. But what was most palpable to me watching his face is that he was paying attention to something inside and probably around his chest heart area. Otherwise, it does seem stupid. I mean, why are people sitting around with their eyes closed? Well, because that is the best way to pay attention to the new intuitive knowledge that doesn't have words, and that is the most creative knowledge. So, and also in the culture now, and let's say again in businesses, at least mindfulness is entering into the mainstream. It now becomes possible to say, at a business meeting, could we all just maybe close our eyes and be quiet for a minute and just kind of be mindful of what's going on in us before we start? So that is a tiny step toward making it okay to close your eyes and go inside in everyday situations. And that is like a major shift for the culture, that we can validate and make not crazy and weird this sourcing of inner wisdom that is so creative.
So, Kathy, I think that's a wonderful point I want to emphasize. Not just in this process when there is a listener, but in all those moments which become more frequent now, where you have a moment of going inside. Okay, and I think if anything, maybe the value of this little demo is to show that the inner process of going inside, is something that is chaotic and a little weird. And so even when we don't have a listener, when we don't voice it, and we're on our own, say in a business meeting and going inside, what might happen is our inner critic might be judging it. Oh my God, what kind of mumbo jumbo, idiotic stuff this is. And to really, having demonstrated it, to show that this is actually what happens when we go inside, and to welcome those moments of floating in that kind of space, because in a way it's like a kaleidoscope where as it gets jumbled up, something new can emerge.
Yes, the kaleidoscope is one of my favorite images for Gendlin's whole focusing process. You turn it and suddenly everything is new, and from out of that you can have new action steps.